Welcome to Keep Going, a podcast about failure and success, hosted by John Biggs. Every week, we talk to an amazing person about a time they failed and what they learned. And remember, when you're going through hell, keep going.
Back to Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. I'm John Biggs. Today on the show we have Mitch Goldstone. He's the CEO of Scan My Photos, which basically does what it says on the tin. Well, welcome, Mitch.
John, great to be with you today. Thank you. Congratulations on Keep Going. It's really good to hear how people overcome adversity.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the goal, right? And I mean, I think the interesting about you guys is you're all about that. So you've told multiple stories about how folks have lost everything and come back from that. And in your specific case, it's all about photos. Lost your family photos to a fire or a flood or something like that, and luckily they used you guys. And I don't want to make an advertisement for it, but I mean that sounds like it must feel good, right?
Well, it did. Let me start, John, by asking you if Keep Going was featured in a 3-minute story on the CBS Evening News, seen by millions of people, plus millions more on the CBS News platforms. Rough guess, how many new subscribers to Keep Going do you think you get? 10,000, 20,000?
I'm a realist, so I would say 2.
My gosh. Yeah. And that was my number. John, I should have spoken to you before, because
I apologize sincerely, but that's exactly the ROI on a news hit, which is the closest to bupkis that you can get without hitting bupkis.
Bupkis, I always aspired to be on the CBS Evening News. I once met Walter Cronkite. I mean, I'm in love with the network, everything. And I thought this was going to be my Oprah effect moment, where Oprah Winfrey would recommend a company and they're overwhelmed. So what happened was we had the crew come out, the producer and the camera crew, everyone else, and the producer with the CBS News. And I was so excited because it was all about my passion, digitizing pictures and how to disaster-proof photos. And I got extra excited when the reporter said they have a drone flying outside our corporate headquarters, zooming in on the large Scan My Photos sign. I was like, wow, this is great. And then it was all done and it didn't air. And we cut all marketing, we cut all advertising, everything, because I wanted to make sure everyone was dazzled that was coming in from the CBS Evening News spot. So what took days, then weeks, 3.5 months, no orders because we cut all marketing promotion. It was a big mess.
So that's interesting. So did they have any promises? I mean, as a person who understands media implicitly, I understand that you should have literally just called me and I would have told you all this would happen. Because historically the journalist, quote unquote, has no control over when it airs. Plus they don't really care, right? It's no skin off their back if it goes out today or if it goes out 10 months from now, because it's essentially evergreen. It's not like you guys said that like for Christmas do XYZ, right? So.
Yeah, well, John, that was the thing. This was very timely. It dealt with how to disaster-proof photos. There were hurricanes going on. Interviewed 2 of our really famous customers, one the son of the late Ed Asner, and he was explaining how his dad's Emmy Awards and all were destroyed in a fire. He rushed out to have us digitize everything. His dad's entire lifetime of pictures to be preserved. So that was one part. And the other part was with the Cayman Islands. We digitized 347,000 photos, the entire history of the Cayman Islands for them. And we got it just as a hurricane was hitting. So that's why I thought it was going to be so timely and not delayed.
And what was the result of your, was it 2 signups?
John, it was tough. There was one word missing. The headline, and on social media, everything, it's all about the keywords. The headline was how technology is preserving memories. It was supposed to be how scanmyphotos.com was
Sure.
preserving memories. So that goes with what you were saying. An editor swapped to Word, and no one knew that I digitized all those photos for the Asner family, and people didn't know who we were. So that's why we got no orders.
Interesting. So that's like a all your eggs in one basket is kind of situation. And
That's the tough part. It was so important because now we were without customers. We had this incredible feature on the uh, so what we did is we had to reinvent everything. First thing was putting on the website a link to the CBS News story so everyone can see it, because they needed to link the people profiled with us. So
uh
that was the first part. But from adversity, and that the whole message about keep going is you got to step back and rethink and do things differently. So during this time we were waiting, I was going to say patiently. John, you've known me for years. As a native New Yorker, I'm not. Yeah. So that was a tough part. The second I would mention CBS, everyone would just kick me out and say, leave.
uh
Um, but that was the first part. Then we all got together and realized we had to do something, because we were banking on this for 3.5 months to be seen by millions of people, but no one knew it was us. So what we did, redesigned the whole website, and then we added some really cool things. We looked at what the competition was doing, and what a mess. And I know you've covered in the past. Um, so there are companies that take weeks and months to digitize pictures. So we said, let's flip everything around. Let's do same day express scanning. So we added that as an upgrade. And the biggest concern is everyone would call or go in live support saying, was there a problem with my order? And we always know exactly what it is, because they're wondering, they just got an email from us, but we just received their photos. So we have a canned response. Please look at the email. There's a link to view all your JPEG files. And that's pretty.
Huh. It's fascinating. So you're in a very specific niche, and people need you for all intents and purposes. They need you once in their lives, right? I think especially now that there's not a lot of paper, photos floating around. How do you grow the pie when it's almost as if the pie's already been eaten?
That's a good question. So many of our customers are repeat customers. We always ask everyone, how did they hear about us? That's part of the reason we know we didn't get any hits from CBS. But the favorite one is, we've been a longtime customer. We just got one. We've been having you scan all of our photos and slides since 2009.
Wow.
So those are the good ones. But the coolest part is, once we digitize someone's photos, John, it's what happens next. They start to share it in the living room TV. They show it and
uh
post all over social media. And then everyone asks the same question. Pretty cool. How did you get all of your home movies scanned? So basically, they're our marketing and advertising team.
So they do it all. They do it all for you, essentially. Okay.
Yes.
So you bet the farm on this. You bet the farm on this hit, on this TV hit. And when it didn't come through, what was the reaction internally? How did you manage around that problem?
John, I was heartbroken.
Uh-huh.
So I got a message, a text from a friend in back east in New York that said, I just saw the piece. And they had to be kidding, because we monitor everything. And we literally should have had thousands of people on the website right away. When we were on the Today Show, it was instant, and it with the couldn't even keep up. But there was no visits on the site. So I thought maybe there was something wrong. And then once it migrated to the West Coast and the Pacific time zone, got more messages. Mitch, we just saw the Scan My Photos hit on CBS Evening News. It was awesome. Congratulations. And my nephew actually said, I loved it, but no one knows it was you. And we got no volume. There were no hits. So I knew that there was a problem instantly. And it was heartbreaking.
What did you guys do to flip that?
After tough language and yelling and screaming, we realized, well, it's already out there and it's been released and it's now being posted on social. So on Twitter, within a few hours, there were 22,000 views of it, but there was no recognition that it was Scan My Photos that digitized all the Cayman Islands photos, as well as for Ed Asner's family.
And what have you found that actually works versus this kind of thing?
Is our customers. They engaged and they started to reach out and say they're going to let everyone know that it was us. But I think the really important lesson is don't give up. So we were in a tough bind because, like I said, we bet the farm, we bet everything. And who wouldn't for a 3-minute feature segment on the CBS Evening News? Um, and it was really tough, but I think it's a lesson for all your other listeners that whenever there's adversity, there's a problem. Okay to yell and all of that, but step back. You must recalibrate and you have to keep on going on. Big fan of Winston Churchill and never, ever, ever, ever surrender and give up.
Uh-huh. You've been doing this for quite a while. What's the secret to longevity in something like this? This is technically a tech startup that's been around for years, decades even.
It is. I think sharing my secret, because I always love to inspire other entrepreneurs. Most importantly, we're coming up on CES. I've been attending CES in Vegas since 1990, constantly learning new technologies, new stories, meeting people. I met Nick Workman, founder of GoPro, at
Uh-huh.
CES years ago. He was the only person at this 10-foot booth. His parents gave him $40,000 to be there. I said, Nick, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. He said, Mitch, you're the only one to say that. Thanks. And
Uh-huh.
years later, I ran into him again and I mentioned it to him. He said, I remember you. So it's those types of things like CES, but it's also about reinventing. My business partner, Carl Berman, and I started, we had a passion for photography. In 1990, we owned traditional retail photo centers. Things were going great. And as you know, then not. And we were in trouble because people stopped buying film, printing, developing, making enlargements, reprints. It crashed. So that's where we came up with this new innovative way for bulk high-speed photo scanning, where we digitize 1,000 pictures in under 5 minutes. And we now digitize, this is new since CBS, we digitize 35 millimeter slides at 4,000 DPI at one every second.
Wow. Huh. So that's actually an interesting point. I mean, you literally had retail stores where you're selling film cameras, and that adversity, I can't imagine what the feeling was as it slowly dwindled away.
John, it was brutal. People wouldn't take phone calls. Hey, we need money. This is a problem. And it was a real challenge, but it was heartbreaking for Carl and I because we love photography. We love this business. We became really close friends with all the former CEOs of Kodak and a lot of people in Rochester, starting with dear friend George Fisher. When he took over, he was the CEO of Motorola. And the whole idea was Kodak should have owned the smartphone, Instagram, Facebook, all of the photo sharing apps. And it was really tough, but that was a big part with Kodak, and over the years learning from them also what not to do. We had to reinvent everything over and over.
Uh-huh. I mean, Kodak is the poster child for the refusal to reinvent, right? They had digital cameras before anybody, and they just refused to accept it.
1975. So one time Kodak uh, had sent us to Academy Awards, all the Olympic Games too. And I remember once in Sydney during the Olympic Games, I was with George and Ann Fisher, Carl sitting at a table, And this is why he was so good. He was leaning forward, listening to one of his customers. And I said, George, here's what we got to do. Got to reinvent Kodak, change the name from Eastman Kodak Company, which is old, stodgy, to Kodak Communications. My business hero was Steve Ross, who invented Warner Communications. And I explained to George that photography is only one part of communications, but so are smartphones. He laughed. He loved it and loved it. It was actually written up in the New York Times from top CEOs in the photo industry with recommendations on how to revive Kodak. And my mention was in there for that.
Interesting. But they just couldn't pull out of the I think, well, at least you figured out a way through that maze.
I did. And now the big part is with AI technology, looking forward to CES. So the next part, after all photos have been digitized, we're working on this virtual reality AI concept where you put on goggles and you see all your pictures from a specific time period. Say it was Disneyland. If people go to the website, they'll see my most precious picture. So my dad and I at Disneyland, 1968, he passed away a year later. And I explained that's how we got into this business, why we love photography. So everyone has one of those pictures. So the idea now is you put on the goggles and you could watch pictures from your family visit to Disneyland, and it's immersive with music, news clippings, all types of engaging, interactive content. So it's not just your pictures which come to life, but it's all the events around that time period. So it's much more than just digitizing pictures. It's what's next.
Well, Mitch, this has been fascinating. Okay, so everybody has to go to scanmyphotos.com as it's pronounced. We're gonna put 15 links in here. So when this goes up, everybody's gonna know exactly where to go.
And they'll know we're the guys on the CBS Evening News, right?
So
hello.
So maybe I'll get you 3 to 4 extra signups. That'll be my gift, my Hanukkah gift
double,
to you.
Yeah.
This is I'm really glad we got to talk about this. This is a fascinating story.
Thanks, John. So glad everything you do all over the place, especially with Keep Going. You have like 80 now sessions, or how many?
I think it's actually like 200.
Why did I say 80? Where have I been?
No, for the past year I've been doing this version, which is all video. But I probably had 150 or 120 earlier ones which were audio, and I kind of realized that people want to see our faces, and it worked out.
So much better. What I really like on my podcast, everyone listening on your podcast, please make sure to subscribe, which you should be if you're listening to this, because it's so worthwhile, because everyone else just talks about all their successes, how great and big and everything else they are. It's really important to learn from the disasters. And what was supposed to be about disaster-proofing photos turned into a real disaster that we had to overcome.
Business disaster. Mitch, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. Remember, Keep Going is entirely listener supported. If you're listening to this, please head over to keepgoingpod.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast for as little as $5 a month. This is a labor of love, and every little bit helps. Thanks for listening.